This video is for historical and educational purposes only. It aims to provide an objective analysis of historical events and does not promote or endorse any ideology, hate speech, or violence. All footage, images, and discussions in this video are used to document and explain historical events based on verifiable sources. Want to watch more videos like this? Join my Patreon and access 40+ posts. Viewer discretion is advised.
1942 has already undergone, in my eyes, the most fateful ordeal of our people. That was the winter of 1941 to 1942. Nothing worse can and will happen. That we have defeated this winter, this general winter, that the German fronts finally held, and that we could advance again this spring, or rather this early summer, I believe is proof that Providence was satisfied with the German people. It was a very difficult and very hard test and trial, as you all know by now. Did we not endure this most difficult time, but managed to calmly organize, redeploy, or form the assault divisions, the murder and armored units that were designated to initiate the further offensive? I believe we can, when we look back, be quite satisfied with the past 3 years. It was always a very sober objective, often very daring, where it had to be daring, thoughtful, where it could be thoughtful, deliberate, where we had time, cautious, where we believed, under all circumstances, we had to be very cautious. But we were also very bold, where only boldness alone could have saved us. For this year, we have devised a very simple program. First, to hold, under all circumstances, onto what must be held. Secondly, to absolutely attack where the attack is necessary under all circumstances. The goal is very clear: the destruction of the right arm of this international conspiracy of capitalism, plutocracy, and Bolshevism. It is the greatest danger that ever hovered over our German people in recent times, against which we have been defending ourselves for over a year, or against which we must take action. And here we now have set some goals for ourselves, and I may briefly mention them as key words. Mention them to make you aware, and to make every German aware of what has been achieved in these few months. The first goal was the securing of our dominant position in the Black Sea through the final pacification of the Crimean Peninsula. 2 battles, the Battle of Kerch and the Battle of Sevastopol, have served this purpose. If our opponents, I may say, had achieved only a single such success in these 3 years, we wouldn't be able to talk with them at all, because they would no longer be on Earth, but floating in the clouds, bloated with conceit. After we got that in order, it seemed necessary to us to eliminate a bulge that had formed at Volkov. It was cut off, and the enemy was destroyed or captured. Then came the next task: preparation for the breakthrough to the Don. Meanwhile, this opponent, in turn, chose a major operational objective, namely to break through from Kharkov to the bank of the Dnieper, to thereby bring down our entire southern front. You may still remember the enthusiasm with which our opponents pursued these operations. They ended in 3 battles with the complete annihilation of more than 75 divisions. Afterwards, our entry into our own major offensive followed. The goal was, firstly, to take the last large forage areas away from the enemy. Secondly, to take away the last of the coal that can be coked. Thirdly, to advance to the edge of his oil sources, to take them or at least cut them off. The attack should then, fifthly, be continued to cut off his very last and largest traffic artery, namely the Volga. And here the goal was set. That area which lies between the bend of the Don and the Volga itself, and is known as the place Stalingrad, not because the place has the name of Stalin, that is entirely indifferent to us, but solely because this is a strategically important location. And because we were aware that the elimination of the Dnieper, the Don, and the Volga as transport routes for Russia would lead to approximately the same and even worse than what would happen to Germany if we lost the Rhine, the Elbe, the Oder, and the Danube. If, on this giant river Volga alone, in about 6 months, 30 million tons of goods are transported. That is as much as an entire year on the Rhine. That has been cut off for quite some time now. The capture of Stalingrad, which will also be completed, will only deepen and strengthen these rules. As for the further objectives, you will understand again that I do not talk about them because they are objectives currently being pursued. Mr. Churchill speaks about them. But the moment will come when the German nation, yes, will have full clarity about these further goals. I can only tell you, seventhly, that we have now set ourselves the task of course, organizing this gigantic, vast area that we have now occupied. Because it wasn't just about saying we have marched so many thousands of kilometers, but we are indeed concerned with this vast space for our warfare. And in a broader sense, not only for the nutrition of our people, the securing of our raw materials, but the preservation of all of Europe. For this purpose, the transportation had to be organized here first. There are tens of thousands and tens of thousands of kilometers of railway lines, which we are now restoring or have already long restored. Thanks. The diligence and density and dedication of many tens of thousands of German soldiers, railway pioneers, men of the organization taught, other organizations, and so on. This vast transportation network, which today mostly runs on German routes again, was completely destroyed. These are not hundreds. These are thousands of bridges that had to be newly built, blast sites that had to be cleared, crossings that had to be newly created. All of this has happened in a few months now, or will be completed in a few weeks. Now, my party comrades, will you also understand one thing? There are people, since you are our opponents, who say, why do they suddenly stop? Because we are cautious. Because we don't first say run to Benghazi or even further, only to have to run back. But because we stay somewhere as long as needed, until our supplies are fully in order again. Of course, people who are not militarily trained do not understand. Therefore, they also have no success. All people who have even a little military training will admit that what we conquer in terms of space in just a few months is absolutely unique in world history. And I say this also because maybe even here we might have some old reactionary Philistine who suddenly says, well, what is this? They've been standing there for 8 days now. Well, my dear Philistine, you're just out of touch. You should step up to sort out the traffic. The German people, I know, have complete trust in their military leadership and the performance of their soldiers. That it knows precisely that it is never stopped without reason. We are not only organizing this traffic, but we must build roads, because the blessed land of the proletarians and peasants unfortunately has no roads, or only fragments of roads. That must also be built. The first truly massive roads are being constructed there by our organizations. Secondly, we are also organizing our agriculture behind that. That means the area should be developed, and that is not so easy, because it is not about sowing and harvesting, but rather it is again about brings the benefit into appearance. That means that these products are brought to the railway over endless distances, so they can be loaded there, that we can convert a part of this economy, that thousands of tractors that are damaged or removed are replaced or improved, or that another substitute is provided for them. And I can only tell you, what has been accomplished here is absolutely tremendous, while the front is fighting. There, the same soldiers, just a few kilometers behind the front line, are already fighting with the sickle and scythe. There, they are already cultivating the fields again. And behind them, there are work deployment staff of our agricultural organization. The first, albeit modest, results of this action we were able to achieve for our, I may already grant us happiness accessible to the German people, but rest assured, we are only at the beginning. The entire past year was a year of struggle, a dreadful winter, and now we are fighting again. But in the coming year, this area will be organized quite differently. The detachment of the population from the pressure. A Bolshevik power that still today holds millions of people there in a despondency, one might say, in a fear that one can hardly imagine in Germany or other countries. It's the fear of the Commissar, the fear of the GPU, the fear of the entire regime that fills the millions of people. All of this must gradually be resolved, and is being resolved. And there are many areas there where the entire population is already working with us in millions. And there are other areas where they are already fighting in our ranks and by our side. the results of this vast activity, which I could only present to you in a few short sentences, are monsters. While we are on the defensive in Northern Europe, in the West, and on all other fronts, we thereby fulfill one of the most formidable prerequisites for organizing Europe for war and for this war. If we, all our allies,